Welcome to this session on designing purposeful performance assessment tasks. The learning target for this session will be that we can create performance assessment tasks that give our learners the opportunity to show what they can do by providing clear evidence of learning. We will be drawing on the new STARTALK infographic on conducting performance-based assessments. And you can find the infographic for this principle and for the other principles under the tab of resources, where you look at the principles, or simply by clicking on this image on the website. We know that we are in a curriculum development process where we think backwards. We plan with the end in mind. So we are identifying the desired results in stage 1, and that's where you pick the performance indicator and the program can-do statements. In stage 2, we're determining that acceptable evidence. What will those performance assessment tasks ask our learners to do? How will they prove that they've met the expectations of the program can-do statements? And in stage 3, we are going to plan the learning experiences that will actually let them be successful on those assessments. So we're thinking in terms of the 3 modes of communication. In world language, we often talk about the IPA, the Integrated Performance Assessment Model. And while we follow assessment practices for each mode, and all of our assessments are connected to our theme, it may not be as tightly integrated as what is suggested here. But learners in STARTALK programs do demonstrate understanding in the interpretive mode. They produce language in the interpersonal mode, unrehearsed communication, and often, depending on the age in the program, they create written and spoken products in the presentational mode. So we look at the work of Bill Van Patten, who says that tasks are the essential communicative event in classroom teaching. And he breaks that down and reminds us that in order to be a task, it must involve the expression and or the interpretation of meaning, that they have a purpose that is not language practice. So they are contrived, designed to be as real world as possible within the confines of that classroom setting, that they can be input oriented in the interpretive mode or output oriented in the presentational and interpersonal modes, that they're structured, they have steps that guide students toward success, and that finally they can progress from simple to more complicated within a unit. So when we're thinking about that within our STARTALK curriculum, we're thinking about those checks for learning, for the lesson can-dos, which lead to the performance assessment task for each program can-do statement. For examples for this particular segment, we're going to draw on the model curricula, Let's Go Somewhere, at the novice level. But in the other model curricula, you will find examples of performance tasks that you should feel free to use or adapt for your programs. What makes it easy for us to share and possibly pull from the model curricula is the fact that all of the STARTALK curricula is written based on the necessitable, actual, can-do statements, where we know the performance range of our students in terms of where they are at that proficiency level, novice, intermediate, advanced, and then where they are most likely to be in terms of performance within a particular unit, selecting the performance indicators or the range of performance that's most appropriate for our learners. And so what you'll see is that when a program picks up one of those functions from the necessitable, actual, can-do statements, in this case, how can I exchange information and ideas in conversation, we can say, okay, my learners are going to be novice high, and here's what they can do. They can ask and answer practice and some original questions on familiar topics, basically meaning the topic of this particular unit. And they use simple sentences most of the time. And that could be a range to intermediate low, where they're creating simple sentences consistently, and they actually move into some follow-up questions. So designing the task within that performance indicators that we've selected for our program. So here you can see that the program can-do statement, I can ask and answer questions about regions that I and others want to visit, is then clarified in terms of performance by the task. So here each student goes to one of 4 different cities or regions. They ask and answer questions to talk about where they're going, why they want to go there, what they want to see and do, what they want to eat. And the restriction is you can't say, are you going to Beijing? You have to ask questions to figure that out, with the goal of being able to determine who's going to the same place that you are going. So that particular task is written to be at that performance indicator. In order then to write the actual task, it's a 4-step process. You think about the purpose, you create the context for the task, which really is created within that curriculum overview, the theme of your unit. You describe the expectations, maybe not in every detail, but kind of what you expect students to do to achieve success. And you imply or give a brief description of the product or performance that is going to be the evidence for this particular task. So if you look at this particular example of an interpersonal performance task taken from the unit, let's go somewhere, the program can-do statement we looked at, that is the purpose. So the program can-do statement serves as the purpose for the task. I can ask and answer questions about regions I and others want to visit. And then the context, in this case, okay, each student is going to go to one of 4 different regions, and they have to find out who's going to the same region or city as they are. The expectations are that they're going to ask and answer questions. They're going to be talking about things they want to see, do, eat. That's where you're bringing in those question and answer frames that you've been working on. And then the product is simply going to be that they will all end up in like-minded groups going to the same destination based on the conversations that they've had. If you take that and you do the same thing in the presentational mode, now you can see that in the interpersonal mode, they talked about where they wanted to go and why they wanted to go there. Now they're going to create a product that describes the city or region and talk about location and climate and those things they want to see and do. And so the performance is going to be a visual presentation, sharing information on a specific city or region with the hope that I can convince you to go there, and expectations are in there for talking about the weather and where the place is, what they want to see and do. And then they'll share these presentations in a gallery walk format and possibly with parents at the end of the program. So again, the purpose is the program can-do statement, describing things they can see and do. The context is going to be within a spoken report that highlights what they can see and do in a specific city or region. Expectations, they're going to have visuals are going to support what they're going to say, very important at the novice level, and that they'll listen as they hear, they'll locate it on a map, they'll complete a graphic organizer. So that also defines the expectations for content. And the product will be what they share in this gallery walk or small group format, and possibly with parents at the end of the program. So each task should show some of what is expected in each of these 4 parts. That leads us then to the learning experiences, because we have to prepare them for success on these tasks. So if you think about it, you create the learning target, you create the activity that checks for learning, you determine those language chunks, sentence, question, answer frames that you need, and then you plan those learning experiences. And so what happens in the model curricula is that you can see the program can-do statement and the performance assessment task here. But what you're really starting to look at now are the lesson can-do statements and that check for learning. So program can-do statement, interpersonal performance assessment task, and lesson can-do statements are written when you are creating your curriculum in the curriculum template. The checks for learning have been added in the model curricula that are online as samples of what you might do to check for learning day in and day out. So back to Vilband-Patton's statement about task can move from simple to more complicated. So from simple to more complicated within the unit. For example, an interpretive might be, I can identify the city or region a product or image is from, and each student will have 2 or 3 images. And then I, as the teacher, would say a sentence that talked about those. Students with those images would stand, possibly walk to a map, point to a map of where that's from. So all they're doing in the interpretive mode is proving that they understand the message. There's no production of language. If we move to the interpersonal mode, where it's negotiation of meaning, talking with other students, I can ask and answer questions to find out where I and others want to go and why. Now it might be chat stations. And so students form small groups in front of those images that are of interest to them. And they can have a conversation to find out why someone wants to go there. When time's up, they move to another chat station. They talk with other people, all within this particular lesson can-do statement. In the presentational mode, now it's on me to rehearse a message, a spoken or written message. I can name a place and give reasons why I want or don't want to go there. 2 truths and a lie. Each student might identify a city or region of interest to them. They would write 2 factual statements about that region and 1 lie. And then they might pair and share what they've written, with the goal being that their partner can identify the lie. The teacher might then call on random students to share with the class, checking the comprehension of the class. So it's very important that lesson can-do statements result in checks for learning that prepare students for that performance assessment task at the end of the unit. All of this is part of that feedback cycle, so that as we're looking at the performance at the lesson level, we're thinking about where they are and where we want them to be, so that we're redesigning our lessons, giving feedback so they are going to have success on that final performance. We think this is really an important piece. The feedback to students is critical, but feedback to ourselves as instructors is equally important. And so for the first time this year, we are asking programs to select 2 of their program can-do statements. So it might be 1 interpersonal, 1 presentational, 2 interpersonal. The choice is up to you. You will submit evidence to your team leader that shows the work of students, and you'll select evidence at the low, the mid, and the high level of performance. So we don't expect all of your students to just be superstars. Show us a representative sample of your work, low, mid, high. Let the team leaders see how this evidence aligns with your program can-do statement and your performance assessment task. Your team leader will reflect on that in the program implementation report. But more importantly, we hope that you will take the time in selecting these to reflect with your instructors on what you're learning from analysis of student work and how that analysis might inform what you do when you apply for a next grant cycle, and if you're funded in the future. This quote in particular, assessing thoughtfully means giving students sufficient time and opportunity to practice and improve through further instruction and feedback before holding them accountable for having mastered the learning target. I'm not sure you can ever totally master a learning target. You can always get better, but there is a line in here about the importance of feedback and the importance of sufficient time. And so it's important, again, that as you're thinking through, although this is on conducting performance-based assessment, that you're thinking through how much can our learners reasonably do in the amount of time that they have. So thank you for your attention during this particular module. And if you want to learn more about the principle conducting performance-based assessment or any of the other STARTALK principles, visit the website. And just a reminder that STARTALK is a federal grant program that is funded by the National Security Agency and administered by the National Foreign Language Center. Thank you for your attention.